became more competitive, it seemed, overall, and I started, which kind of bummed me out in a lot of ways, because I could see the camaraderie between all the bands, kind of going away.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 New Jersey punk rock scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Or Doyle. I'll stop saying that after this episode. The first band I was in was called Congress of Cow. We played in our drummer Jeff's basement and had shows in front of our friends in said basement. So once we started playing Legion halls, we realized that we needed a demo tape so people would know who the fuck we were. Chris started Portrait in 95 and created a ton of albums that helped local punk bands get their sound out to the local masses. Some of the bands on his recording roster are Dillinger Escape Plan, The Early November, Midtown, most of, if not all, the Pinball Records catalog, and my old band Lanemeyer, plus like a ton of other fucking bands. In this episode, we'll learn how Portrait started in his parents' garage, labels he recorded records for, how his studio produced a shit ton of records that launched the scene, the shift from locally funded records to major label takeover, the recording with Dillinger Escape Plan and Mike Patton, that was really fucking awesome to find out. How the fall in CD sales had a huge effect on the marketing for producers, because people weren't looking in the artwork anymore to see who was producing the record, which I didn't even think about. And we find out if he's even sick of recording bands yet. Now, before we start, feel free to subscribe and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Chris Badami, the guy who let everyone listen to music in their cars and homes back in like the late 90s from recording all these bands. How are you?
I'm good, man.
Yeah?
How are you?
I'm good. Where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm just sitting in the lounge of the studio here, getting ready to start my day after talking with you. So
it's kind of weird to go. It's to go back in time of when we, I'll get into all that, but when we first met, you was at the studio in the garage, and now it's kind of weird to be interviewing you, and you're still at the studio, but it's the bigger studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah.
That's just kind of it's so random. Just like I think when we first met, we walked in. We had never met. I forget how we even found you back then, but we just like showed up at the garage, loaded in our crap, spent a couple days with Congress of Cow recording a demo, and
yep,
that was wild shit. But let me kind of, before I jump too far ahead, so anyone listening is most likely a fan of the late '90s, early 2000 punk scene, and that's the point of this whole podcast. And I wanted to just get a little nostalgic and go back for my own. This is like a passion project. This isn't for anyone. I'm not getting paid for this shit. I just really was like, this would be awesome to reminisce. So in that sense, the reason I chose you is because you and John from Nada were like basically the guys who were recording all of the music back then.
Yeah.
And,
it was it was an awesome time.
Yeah, man. So kind of going backwards, like how did Portrait start?
Oh man, well, I started Portrait basically. It was originally started as a studio for my band.
Gate, right?
Yeah. I was playing. We were playing and touring, doing our thing, and we didn't have money to go to studios all the time and stuff. So in between, like when we would save money to go to whatever studio we wanted to work at, and we wanted to obviously demo, and I got really into doing recording. I was actually going to college for it too at the same time, and I decided I'd like to set up a little like demo studio for us so we could demo whatever tracks we're working on, and it started that way. And then my parents basically let me take over their garage at the house, and they were super supportive, and they were really into me doing recording and stuff. They knew that I had a passion for it, that I really loved it, and so yeah, my dad was like, yeah, we'll build some rooms, and try and get this thing, try and get something together here, so you guys can do some recording. And it started that way, and then I started recording friends who we'd meet playing whatever shows, and it just went from there into what it is today, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, man, because you made it. When did it start? What year was that?
95 I started.
Damn.
Yeah, I started it in 95, basically right out of, I was, just in college, just starting college. And, I started it literally right out of high school. Summer I graduated high school.
Did you want
didn't
to?
really,
Yeah, go on.
no, I was going to say, I didn't really start recording, I think many other bands. Like I said, at first it was just, demoing stuff for my band. And I would say probably within a year after I had set it up, I was really starting to record like a lot of other bands, outside of my own and everything.
How did you figure out how to build it? Like, cause your dad, was he, did he build stuff back in the day, or did he kind of say like, let's just figure this out?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a little bit of both, I mean, my dad and like my family were, a bunch of, and my uncle's an electrician, and my other uncles were, is in construction. So like building was like in our family. My dad actually was, he knew how to do that stuff too from just growing up and everything like that, even though he didn't really do that for a living. He was, an engineer and stuff like that. Not a recording engineer, but, civil, he studied civil engineering and stuff like that in college and stuff. And anyway, so yeah, we just got to the use the family basically to help, build some rooms and, read up on some stuff, that we could, find back then, and just kind of, guessed and didn't really know much back then. I mean, obviously I had gone to studios already as being in bands and stuff, and, saw and asked some questions to, some of the guys who, we had worked with, at the time. I mean, I had only been in like some basement studios and stuff like that. And
where did you record prior to Portrait?
Prior to Portrait, oh man, well, we used to record at this studio called Third Studio from the Sun in Wayne with this guy Dave, who was a really nice dude.
Wait,
and
was that like in his basement? It was like in his house.
Yep, it was in like his parents' house. Like he set up like in his basement of his parents' house, I think. Or
was he a big smoker?
I don't think so. I can't remember, man.
I think I remember this studio. I think Lane Meyer recorded there too, like our demo, and it was just like some nice guy, but it was just he was really quiet, but it was kind of sketchy at the same time.
I mean, Dave, from what I remember, it was pretty like, I mean, we always thought it was like, whoa, this place is super legit, like, cause he had like a bunch of rooms set up. He had a lounge, like it was, it had his like own entrance to the place and stuff. And he did it up pretty nice when we were there, at least. So I don't know, it may be a different place that you were thinking of. I don't know, but
yeah, I think it was off of Skyline Drive, the place that we went to. I think I might be thinking something different.
Yeah. I can't even remember which street. I think this was maybe on Alps Road, but anyway.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I remember talking to him, and then a couple other people who we went to and stuff. But like it was all like a basement stuff, and it wasn't until I got to into college and I started an internship like right away as soon as I was in school, where I actually went into like a real commercial studio, and it was like, whoa, man.
Okay.
It was so.
Did you ever when you saw that though? Did you ever think like, because and I think all of us started in bands back then, so all we wanted to do, and then you were like, well, we could save money by me making this studio, so let me just do this, but the band is the main focus? Or was there a point where I want to do both, or was it I want to be in the studio and then the band's kind of a side thing? Like where were you at?
I mean, I think for me it was always pretty equal, like obviously, I mean, playing was always my first love, with like being obviously playing drums, and writing songs and stuff like that. With that was, I mean, that's where I come from, and I always loved, like I said, but I always loved technology. I always loved, being in the studio. So for me, I think I always felt that I was going to do both at whatever capacity I could. I mean, I always tell everyone that I never really did have the intention of opening my own studio. I just figured, I'll, get a job at a studio somewhere, like a legit studio in New York or whatever, see how the band does and how things go over the years. And and kind of just, figure it out as I go, but it kind of took a different turn once I started, recording a lot of bands at my own studio, and I mean, I'm super humble and thankful for it because, the fact that I'm still here today and able to support my family on it is pretty amazing,
Yeah,
so,
man. Did you ever, like, when you were starting the studio, because I know everyone in general who does anything in their life, they always see someone else and they're like, I'm never going to be as good as that person, or they're so much better, Did you ever think to yourself, I got this studio, but it's not good. It's just not as good as that one. Or did that never even cross your mind? You're like, fuck it, man. I'm just gonna make music. I don't give a shit, and I'm just gonna do the best I can and just geek out on this shit.
Yeah, I mean, that was always my attitude, and it still is my attitude today. I was just like, yeah, fuck this. I'm just gonna do it. Do the best I can and the best that we can on whatever project we're working on, and I always try not to think about the other. I mean, yeah, of course sometimes you do. I mean, there is competition, of course, so you're always paying attention, but I don't I never really had that attitude. It was always like, oh man, like I was just so stoked to be doing it, and like having bands come in and just being in that environment of creating and, going through the process of making, a song from start to finish, just always inspired me, and it was really, it's the band's inspiring me, like even just on a, I mean, just from, musically in general, just how I get so stoked. I used to say, I mean, even back then it was like, wow, like I'm finding myself listening to more and more of just the stuff that I do.
That's awesome.
Than other stuff, but I mean, obviously I do, listen to other stuff, but I mean, it was just, it was just so much fun, and that's the thing. I always, and I think maybe because I never had the intention of like saying like, oh, I'm going to start my own business and start my own studio kind of thing. And I think because I started out with just like, oh yeah, this is fun. I got, friends come, we played a show with these guys last week, they're going to come over and do a song, like, it's like, we were all friends, and
yeah.
That's one thing I loved about obviously the punk community here and, the mid-late 90s. I mean, everybody was friends, and hanging out all the time. And it was so much fun, man. So much fun. So I still try and keep that fun. in
yeah,
today,
actually, I'm going to talk about that later and just kind of go back in the past, the way I've structured this is to really kind of just go before all this started and then kind of go towards where you are now. But,
right.
yeah, man. Was there? I have one here. It's like what equipment you're using, but I don't think anyone really cares. Actually, no. Were you
sure,
back then? No, I think you were using analog, weren't you back then?
Well, actually, no. I started the studio I with ADAT tape machines, which were digital recording. I mean, obviously it was an analog console and analog outboard equipment, but yeah, I mean, I really started the studio. Like I remember I had I had 16 track ADAT, the old ADAT,
yep.
The original ADAT tape machines that would, after a while eat tapes and, there was like so much.
Did you ever have like a recording where you had it eat a tape and you're like, shit?
I mean, fortunately, I don't think we had anything really catastrophic like that. There was a couple times where maybe we would, I mean, it wouldn't. I'm trying to remember if a tape got actually eaten and like we were destroyed. I don't think that ever.
There was like a fear, like something.
There always was the fear. Like I remember seeing like the head cleaning light like come on and be like, oh man, we got to get through this today,
Oh my god.
And so yeah, I mean, equipment wise, yeah, I started with really, I mean, it was really not much at all. I mean, it was those 8-AT tape machines. I had like this old Soundtracks console that I got that was like a little 24 channel console. And I remember like I had like one condenser mic that I bought, like Audio-Technica 4033 and like 7 or 8 SM57s. I started that way. By the time I think you guys came in, I actually had some other mics.
Yeah, when we
little more of a variety.
Yeah, we came
point,
in, man. I mean, I was blown away. It was because I always had a dream of as a kid to be in a band, and then the moment we walked in the studio, it was just that reality. Because we had recorded at Jefferson High School our scratch demo, and then I think it was someone in my high school who had recommended you, and then we ended up showing up there.
I actually think it was Chris's girlfriend at the time. Tracy.
Tracy Baugh.
Yeah. That's because Tracy actually was.
She
interned at the studio I was working at the time, and I remember her saying, I think that's exactly how it happened, because then she said, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend's band is looking for a place to record. You should check them out. You'd totally be into their stuff," and that was how it all went down, I think, at the time.
Yeah, man. I remember just walking in. I think it was a Friday night. We roll in around 6 or something, right after traffic on 23, and we pull up. There's this garage, and we roll in, and I think it was freezing outside. And you had the heaters. Like I remember you walked in, it'd be freezing. You kick on the heaters, but there was the couches out in the chill area, whatever you would call that, like the lounge. There was the TV with Nintendo, when ice hockey was always the big thing that with playing. And then around the corner was to the room, and then there was the vocal room, and then there was like where the kit would go and all the guitars and shit on the right.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I had one room it was like a little drum room, and another room that was just the like performing room, we would call it, where we did everything else basically at the time, and then the control room. Yeah, and later on I built two little isolation booths, two other little isolation booths like in the back. I don't know if that was because when was it? You guys were there what, 97, 96?
96, because we had all started getting our licenses in 96, and that summer is that's actually, was it summer or winter? I can't remember. I think it was that winter. It was our senior year of high school is when we started going there.
I remember you guys being so stoked to come in.
Oh man, it was
awesome.
So great. And then I think even then we fought. Like me and Chris were always at each other's throats at all times, but that's when we had Maselli playing drums back then. What was so what broke you into the North Jersey punk scene? Like what record got you attention where everyone's like, we got to go record there?
Oh man, well, I mean, I think actually, I mean, when I started doing a lot of records for Pinball,
right.
I mean, specifically the one record that, I mean, well, there was a bunch. I mean, Jay was putting out such great stuff at that time, you know. Yeah. I mean, you guys kicked it off for me, though, really. I mean, like, once I had you guys in the studio, then you guys, I remember being friends with Josh from Right Turn Eddie came down, and then next thing you know, like, Right Turn Eddie's coming in, and then it was just like a total domino effect. Like tons of like everybody who was playing together would just start coming through. But I mean, I think what really broke it out was definitely started to do a lot of pinball stuff. I mean, the One Cool Guy was doing so much back then and everything. And then really when I did the Midtown record, when Jay put out the Midtown record, that was
wait, he put out the first. He had the EP that they did.
He had Sacrifice of Life. Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's so freaking crazy. Yeah, man, I remember like we would come down. I think Right Turn Eddie was recording their album. We'd come down there and hang out in the studio while they were recording and watch that. And then when we started playing, I mean, when we had that demo, no one knew who the hell we were. So we were still Congress of Cow. And we'd show up at these shows like no one gave a shit. Like no one fucking cared. And it wasn't until like the Lanemeyer days where we really started like humming along, and we recorded that record there. But and
then a lot of people love that first Lanemeyer record.
Yeah, man, that was fun. That recording session was really fun because that's where, I mean, just for me personally, that's when I started writing songs and singing and got to. I think we didn't have Alan in the band. We had just kicked him out, and we had Heiner in the band, and that's when we went in. But I don't think Chris let Rob record, and I think he told him when we got there that he was not recording.
Yeah, but Rob hung out with me.
Yeah, Rob was just basically like telling us like, "Hey, man, that sounds good or that sounds bad." I think we did the same thing to Andy in Congress Like Out. I don't think Chris let
Right.
Andy record. Oh my God. So like, when did you start noticing that the studio is really taking off and you had to expand, or did you just choose to expand to a different space?
Yeah, I mean, I think, after 5 years basically in the garage, definitely was starting to outgrow it. I mean, the thing that started happening was, I mean, I think at that time, after, like I said, all the, I mean, yeah, there was tons of different indie labels that I started doing work for, after starting doing the pinball stuff.
Like who?
And, oh gosh, I mean, just in Jersey alone, oh man, there was, well, let's see, Red Leader, we did, your record was Red Leader, right? Lane
Yeah.
Meyer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh God, there was Puncture Point, and then I started doing stuff for Victory.
Did
Started
Umbilical?
doing some stuff
Umbilical
for Umbilical. Yeah,
something?
Umbilical. We did some things for. Gosh, I mean, I would have to look back, man. I remember there was like I mean, I feel like everybody had an indie label at that time too.
Oh, yeah.
That was putting out something.
Or like all the compilations that would come out back then.
Oh yeah, a ton of them. Yeah, and then I remember Steve LWL started the label. Like, what was it, Small Records? Did a bunch of stuff for him with that label.
Right.
So yeah, we were doing a lot of different, and a lot of the bands were really like, actively touring, and the whole scene was just exploding like at the time. And then I started doing a lot of work for Drive Thru, once Midtown got signed. And then, so, that kind of took things to a different level. And for me, it was like, well, if I'm going to do this and like, I mean, I gotta step it up. Like, I guess like equipment wise and like facility wise and stuff. Cause, there was still, I remember there was, some bands. I mean, I don't, I'm, at the time, just talking, oh yeah, we should record the drums in a big live room. Chris, you come and record us at another studio that has a big live room or something like that. And I'd be like, oh, okay. I mean, we could do that. But then I'm just like, wow, like this was starting to get brought up, multiple times. It's like, oh, you know what? I think I really should try and, actually find a place where I could build a live room.
Do you think there would have been like a financial way where being a producer would, because remember when all of a sudden the producers became the shit back then, where everyone was like, well, who produced the record? Like,
right.
Do you think that like, who was the guy who produced Jimmy Eat World's first two records? He was like the name.
Mark Trombino.
Yeah. I remember everyone thinking that, and they would tie the band to the producer. Do you think that on a, I don't want to say financial level because I don't want to get into that, but like, do you think maybe for, just for a career wise, like it would have made more sense to become a producer, because then you would have all that overhead and you could have just shown up and played with the dials? Or did you like that you stayed in the direction you went in?
I liked that I stayed in the direction. I mean, I always thought about that originally, like, okay, like I'll just be a freelance, producer, and just, go, okay, I'll track at this studio, mix at this studio, because that was kind of what was happening then, and that's what, guys like Trombino would do, and stuff. But, the problem was like that. I don't know. I mean, I think I already had built a reputation of having a studio, and there was, people who knew the studio name for one thing, and I didn't want to lose that totally, and also, just I wanted to be able to work as freely as I could with budgets. And it's still the same to this day, work with whatever budget, bands have, and it's so, I mean, obviously it's the music business and it's so volatile and everything is, there's different budgets for everything. And, so I wanted to always be able to kind of have, that, the control over, okay, we can, we don't have to worry about breaking our whole budget just to go to this one place to record drums, and then we've got no money to do really anything else or whatever. I want it to be able to, have it be as fair as possible so that we could make the best record possible, so yeah. I took it all on myself, man, with just stepping up my equipment and, the facility. I mean, it was just like, and I would, I'd work for one thing and, then work for another thing and, try and just stay alive as best as possible, through the whole thing.
Yeah, man, 'cause there was that peak. There was that the late 90s is when I felt that the local shows started to really explode, where it became we were all friends, but then bands started to become more serious and business-like, and that kind of I felt that created this wedge and divide because all of us showed up at scenes or at local shows because we were the ones I felt in high school that didn't find that group, and we didn't care about the high school group, so we showed up on the weekends to these Legion halls because we all were the same group. And we thrived on that. We'd party afterwards, and we, all these things. But then, when I think a couple people in the scene started realizing there was a financial gain, it kind of turned it back in that high school sense, and then caused it to be a little bit weird. Did you notice that in the studio at any point?
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely did. It definitely was a shift there. Going into 2000. That. Yes, exactly. I mean, more bands. It became more competitive. It seemed overall, and I started, which kind of bummed me out in a lot of ways because I could see the camaraderie between all the bands, kind of going away, and that was kind of a bummer because I loved how everybody was friends and how, there would, I think practically every band, like I said, would always have someone from another band hanging out, when they were recording or whatever, and like I said, everybody went to the same shows, would look forward to the same shows. They knew where all the, all the good shows were happening and stuff. And then I think as soon as it got more commercialized overall, and that's what was happening. It went from the underground to the forefront, and there's good and bad things that happen with that.
It's like when AP Magazine started showing certain punk bands on the covers, when it went from like Quicksand and what was the girl band back then that was really rough? I feel like all those Seattle grunge bands, when it made this shift and all of a sudden Taking Back Sundays on the cover and all these bands, and then they all had to wear this certain style. It was like I felt like it was the 80s glam rock that just shifted in became the punk scene because everyone had to wear just these stupid fucking get-ups back then. I was like, what is happening? Like, I saw that happening with emo, where everyone would show up and they'd be wearing sweaters and tight jeans, and I'm like, how do you play in that? I sweat my ass off on the stage. Like, how are you wearing a collared shirt under a fucking sweater right now for 30 minutes?
Yeah. And not pass out. Yeah.
Did you find that when that was happening in drive-thru, because drive-thru was huge in the early 2000s? Did you find that there was this spike in, you had the new studio, and then did you find you were working with bigger budgets?
Yeah, I mean, budgets were definitely, there were bigger budgets. I mean, they weren't like, crazy budgets, that you would hear about with records in the industry. But I mean, they were bigger budgets. I mean, obviously, the stuff was selling, so there was definitely more money that could be spent on, making a record and doing things, as professional as possible, and, but yeah, I mean, there definitely was that commercialization of it, and, I mean, at the time, I mean, I think there was a lot of like what had happened, with like drive-thru, where they were, part of a major label, they were part of MCA, and then Geffen, which is under Universal, and there was like all those, drive-thru Victory, Fueled by Ramen, everybody, that like everybody was becoming part of a major, so I mean, it was just, it was really the commercialization bringing that whole scene to the forefront, at the time. And
I think between that and like the Warped Tour, it really started getting a lot of people's eyes on what is this thing? Let's really, let's make this our thing. And then the people in the punk scene were like, this is bullshit, man.
Exactly.
You're ruining our scene right now.
That's exactly it. So I think, and for a lot of the bands, I think that it changed too. It changed from, oh man, we just want to play music and, write some songs, hang out with our friends, and, to, oh no, man, we want to be signed. We want to be on drive-thru.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's talking to drive-thru. Everybody's talking to Victory. Everybody's talking to, whichever Vagrant, whichever other labels out there, like, I mean, And it was funny how like I felt like there was a lot of shifts in the scene at that time too, with just like musically how things were going. It's like, Blink, Enema of the State got huge. Everybody's a pop punk band. And then, then Dashboard comes out. It's like, man, everybody's got acoustic guitar now,
Yep. Yeah.
And and then obviously emo, then screamo, it was like, in Jersey, especially around here, like, you see so many bands like would be like, oh wow, that band was a pop punk band, now they're doing screamo. Oh wait, now that
yeah,
it was funny. Like,
or they're adding this screamo chorus now for no reason at all. It's just because it's cool.
Right. And so which was like totally unlike everything before that. Where it's just like, yeah, these like this one band sounded completely different from the other band, and that's what was cool about it,
Yeah.
And there's there was a lot of chasing that started happening, and hey, I mean, I get it, but it was definitely a different attitude and different view on things. But the competition is what was the most interesting to me, how it went from everybody kind of being friends to everybody not talking about who they're talking to, or what they're or which contact they had, or this or that,
Oh yeah,
really
man.
Interesting.
I think we were definitely a huge part of that. Just we were such dicks. Like, we were so jealous of bands making it back then. I mean, we'd be on the road and I'm humble enough to say that, like, I was so sore because we'd be sleeping in parking lots and shit like that. And we hear about these bands that are, playing to like 3,000 people. And I'm like, fuck them. It's like, what, they get one record out and they're exploding right now. But it's, it's good to look back in hindsight and be like, man, I was an asshole. Is there a favorite record that you did where you absolutely just love it even to this day?
Oh man, wow, that's a tough question. I love so many records that that I've done, but oh jeez. I would say
from the late 90s, not add anything past that, from like the late 90s, probably around 2001, 2002, to kind of really narrow it down.
Oh wow, it's 2001, 2002, yeah. Well, one of my favorite records that I did back then was LWL's Quarter Life Crisis.
Okay.
I love that record. I love working with Steve, and and then obviously Midtown, Sacrifice of Life. I really had a lot of fun working on that too. Yeah. And I can still listen to those records today and be like, man, this was pretty cool for being in the garage, back then, But it's interesting because kind of once, 2000 it is when I moved, so then like, then a lot of things, with being in the when I moved the studio to Lincoln Park then, and then, we had, different space and everything. There was, a lot of different records started happening at that time. I mean, one of the ones, 2002, Dillinger Escape Plan, Irony's a Dead Scene.
I was just going to ask you about that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that, getting to work with Mike Patton on that record, because he sang, in the whole record. I mean, that's a record. So I was just listening to it recently, just being all nostalgic, because Dillinger's the Quits or whatever, their last shows in December, and I think that record did a ton for me too, back then. I mean, just I was, I actually did a few records for Relapse before that, when Dillinger was on, Relapse, and at the time, and but yeah, that was that record I listened to today and be like, yeah, man, this is super sweet.
Did you record that first record, or was the Patton record?
Irony's a Dead Scene is the one that that's the Patton record.
Because when I was looking at all the YouTube videos of all the and the Instagram of Dillinger's playing in New York at
Terminal 5,
and and then their original singer Dimitri, he had got up on stage and he actually sang songs from that first record. I thought that was super dope. But I think even Patton got up there.
Yeah, Patton was up there, did some stuff off Irony, yeah, for sure.
So what was
cool.
like, because it's the shift, looking at them back then, I remember talking to you about this. I think I was home visiting one time. I was trying to get some kind of demos. I was picking up some files from you, and I asked you this back then. You were like, yeah, these guys all showed up and they're all in their like emo gear and super chill. And I'm looking at them now on stage. It looks like someone just like hooked them all to chains and just dragged them through dirt and mud for the last 10 years. And you could just It's like you see the road in their skin when they're on stage. Like, I'd say maybe that's just me, but they look so beat the fuck up when they're on stage now compared to the images back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, well, I always thought what was great about them was that you would see the guys and talk to them and hang out, and they were awesome dudes, and like you would never think that they were playing that kind of music.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you think that, you know, crazy, you know, metal, whatever, these guys are going to be, you know, super long black hair, you know, looking all tough, and then, you know, you hang out with everybody and be like, oh man, no, this is, you would never have thought that of that band. And
Oh yeah.
but they were, but yeah, I mean, they were, you know, and that's what was amazing about them, because then, you know, you would, you know, you see them talk to them, never think that would come out of that. And man, I mean, they created a scene, man, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing, you know. I mean, with those two, and all the different members. I mean, there's so many, they've had so many member changes since, you know, I did that record for them. So,
well, the bass player,
and
Ben, I think they're the only two who've been there from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, that was a super special record that I was a part of for them. And
when like Patton walked in, were you kind of like, holy shit, this is Mike Patton?
Yeah, because for me, like at that time, it was like, I mean, I was a huge Faith No More fan and Mr. Bungle fan. So like, for me, it was like, this was like the first like super celebrity to me that I was like working with, you know. And like I had, you know, when I worked at other studios and stuff and intern, like, yeah, there would be, you know, obviously some, you know, celebrities that would walk in and stuff, but like, it'd be like, wow, this is amazing, you know. But for me, this was like my session and like a band that I grew up, you know, listening to, and it's like, holy shit, here's fucking Mike Patton, you know.
Yeah.
And he came in, and it was like, you know, it's like we'd go out to eat at the diner, and we're like sitting at the diner, and like, you know, people, you know, like I think there was like maybe one or two people who would come up to be like, yo, you're Mike Patton, you know. But it was just like, I'm like, I was so blown away, and Mike was super awesome, and just his work ethic was just something.
He looks like he'd be super intimidating because on stage he just shows up and he's like, I don't give a fuck. But then I feel that in the studio he would be, you know, this is my life, this is my craft, I take this very seriously. But I feel like even if you gave him advice or suggestions, he would have taken it.
Yeah, I mean, he was super, super awesome to work with, man. I mean, he had, I will say, like work ethic wise, like he had everything planned out what he wanted to do, and he was always up for suggestion, you know. And he was not like, you know, you think like, oh man, okay, this dude, you know, obviously he's, you know, he's huge.
Oh yeah.
These huge records, huge tours, you know, like this dude's gonna come in and just be like, fuck this, you know, like just get it done, you know. He was not like that at all. He was super into it. Yeah. He was super into it. He had amazing stories. Oh my god. I mean, but he was amazing to work with. And I mean, his work ethic was just awesome. Like he was so prepared, you know, with what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it, you know, just with the different sounds and different things. I mean, we had so many different setups that we would do for vocals. I mean, it was also one of the craziest sessions, I think, in terms of, I think I had like, you know, 24 to 32 tracks just of vocals, you know, like on various, you know, songs pitches and stuff, you know, and stuff. So it was awesome. It was an amazing experience. And yeah, he was super, super sweet to work with.
Do you have any bands that you were like, I fucking hated working with this band? You don't have to say their names, obviously, that's not your style. But like, you could say, yeah, there were a few. And again, like, this is really like, I really want to focus on like the late '90s, like early 2000s era, kind of stay in that realm. It's like any bands from that time where you're like, yeah, I was kind of cool with them leaving the studio.
I mean, I wouldn't say really bands. There's maybe like a couple of members of certain bands that I was just like, oh my gosh, you know.
What was it? What perturbed you about them?
Well, you know, I think at that time, because ego started really coming into the studio with certain, you know, some folks. I mean, that's just part of it, you know, and I understand that. And I always say I've been fortunate because I really get along with the majority that I've worked with over the last 23 years, so it's and I don't mind the ego thing. Like, that's okay, whatever, that's I deal with it, and we work around it, however we can. But I think it was interesting because at that, like at that time, especially late 90s, there was certain, maybe a few people, to remain nameless, who like, were, in bands that, were okay, but then there was this ego that was just, like, so, some of these dudes would have, like, just and when you start talking shit on other bands and stuff like that, like, like that, it's just, I don't know, like at that time it kind of turned me off because it was, like I said, everybody was friends, and it's like, oh man, dude, like, you're just hanging out with this guy, like, like what? Like,
yeah.
Why you did? I mean, and granted, I mean, like you said, yeah, you guys would get pissed at, whatever, but
man, we were the worst shit talkers. We were the worst shit talkers.
But I think there's differences in shit talking too, but that's a whole conversation for another podcast. But
I can't wait to get someone on who's like, oh yeah, this is like names like, fuck that guy, fuck them still. I couldn't fucking stand them. And I'm sure there's someone gonna be in an interview. They're just gonna go off. I'll be like, okay, it's time to let that go now.
Yeah.
Did you go to a lot of shows back then?
Yeah, I went to a bunch, man. I mean, I was just talking about the Manville Elks Lodge the other day.
Oh, wow.
I used to go, and Wayne Firehouse. I mean, Wayne Firehouse was right here. I mean, so it was.
That was the Mecca.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to this day about seeing Jimmy Eat World there, and yeah, that show, the Midtown opened it or whatever. I think Jester Brazil was on it too, and I mean, yeah, I went to a bunch of shows back then, as many as I could when I wasn't, working and stuff,
Yeah.
So,
I'm still I'm trying to get Ricky on the podcast to interview him about
yeah, he'd be great.
Bomb Shelter. And,
yeah.
He's kind of on the fence. He's like, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm like, dude, you have to get on there because I mean, he really created that North Jersey scene. I mean, he like brought in he did that show, the Jimmy Eat World. He did At the Drive-In show with Get Up Kids and all these amazing shows back then. But
yeah.
What's the scene like now?
Completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's well, I think here in Jersey, it's just completely different, and it's really non-existent in a lot of ways to the way it was,
Are you still recording bands? Are you still recording bands in the Jersey scene now? Or, I mean, obviously you are getting local, but are they like the punks? Are they still trying to keep that sound alive and you're recording them?
I mean, not, from over here, I mean, there's been a couple, and there's small little scenes that are trying to, get it back and bring it back, as best they can, but it's not, it's not the same. I mean, most of the stuff that I work on today, honestly, it's all from all over, from out of state. And there's different scene. I mean, there's a great punk scene in Pittsburgh right now.
Really?
I've been working with a lot of bands. So I just did a record for a band, Eternal Boy. They're doing a bunch of great stuff there in Pittsburgh. And it's funny. There's scenes, that are happening in other states. And yeah, I wind up having a lot of people come to me now, from even other countries too.
Really?
I just did a record for this band Jennifer Rostock in Germany. I did 2 records for them actually, and they're huge in Germany. I mean, they're on a major, and they're kind of like. A lot of people compare them to like Paramore, over in Germany, even though they're not really like them sound wise at all. But yeah, I think just that level of, female fronted, big, like, punk rock kind of band and stuff like that, influenced bands. So
have you ever heard of any larger bands that have mentioned that, yeah, man, what got me into my career now was hearing this record and it was one that you recorded?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's funny, like, even like, for like Jennifer Rostock, like the Dillinger record, like they would talk about that record in like the early November records and stuff, like 2 totally different kind of bands.
Wow.
But a lot of, I mean, a lot of the bands that come to me, it's really all because of records that I've done, and stuff. And it's, I mean, it's super humbling, man. I'm so stoked that people are hearing, what I'm doing still today, and
Yeah, no, go on.
I was saying it's interesting too, just because now we live in a streaming world, and where nobody knows who does records unless bands give them a shout out, on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, or whatever, the socials, and back in the day, obviously we used to get a CD and you'd look at the back of it, it'd say, oh, produced, engineered, and mixed by Chris Badami,
Yep.
and or whoever, recording in Portrait Recording Studios. I mean, and nobody knows that today, so it's pretty scary in a lot of ways, for I think all producers, because to actually, that was our biggest advertisement in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
And because because people aren't buying records like that anymore, and you just put it up on Spotify, you have no idea sometimes where it was recorded, who it was recorded with, and or who, even if there's other musicians who played on the record, you have no idea.
I never even thought about that. Like, I always think about the labels not making money or just questioning how they actually make money, but I never thought from a studio perspective, they show up and they pay you for your time, but I never thought of, okay, well, now how is everyone else finding us?
Right. Exactly, man. So, obviously we stay as active on social media and all the, ways that bands are promoting themselves today and stuff. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's different today too, versus back then, is just being in a social media driven world of music, has really changed, the scene in general.
Oh yeah.
And not just music in general, too.
Do you still talk to anybody anymore? Like on
who?
I
talk to everybody, man. I'm talking to you right now.
Do you talk to people? Yeah, I think you and I probably connect every couple of years or every 5 years or something, because I think that when Laymeyer was done, I came back into town and there was a recording or a master track that you had that I grabbed from you, and we sat down and talked. And this was like 2007, maybe like 2006, and then the other time we talked is when we did the podcast, that business podcast, a couple years ago.
Right.
When you came on. So there's always like that random thing where we like connect again.
Yeah.
But, anybody else in the scene, is anybody from back then, like, like Steve, like Jaworski, super funny story. One of my main clients, he actually works for their company. Because I saw him on Instagram. I'm like, how do you know Steve LWL?
Oh man, that's so funny.
Yeah. So is there anyone that's around that you like that sometimes just pops in out of nowhere, or you just like randomly text or email each other?
Yeah, I'll talk to every once in a while. It's funny. Like I haven't talked to Steve in a long time, and obviously on Facebook I see a lot of people. And we'll, sometimes commenting on things. Like I see Monkey. I talk to. I see him at shows every once in a while.
Oh really?
Or he'll reach out to me and stuff. So I still I talk to him too, and obviously yeah, I actually saw, it's funny about Chris, when I moved the studio here, the Pompton Plains now and everything, he was working for Verizon, and I was getting the phone lines installed, and he sends me a text and he's like, yo dude, did you move the studio? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, we're gonna start working in a couple of weeks. He's like, hey man, I was supposed to install your phone lines today. I was like, oh, this is amazing, man. And it was funny. There was like, that happened with like multiple people when I moved the studio. Like Eric, who was a singer in his band Stafford, like he was like, oh, he was working for ADT, installed the alarm system, and it was just like random. It wasn't like I called that like knowing that that's where they were working for or whatever now. But it was like, there was a few people.
We see you're leaving your subscription. Can I get you back? And you're like, Derek Boxcar?
It's funny, man. It's funny.
Yeah, because Chris was heading up. He was working for Verizon. He's still working for Verizon, but he was installing lines back then. And then I think Pompton Plains or that area was his domain. But now he heads up like 300 guys or something. He's like the boss.
Nice.
Yeah, he does.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's like, they fear him too. I've heard that when people say Chris Barker's name in the realm of his employees, they're like, oh, we don't fuck with Mr. Barker.
That's awesome.
I mean,
that's great.
He's got some still got some aggression. He just gets out by just like firing people.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. If anyone's listening and works for him, I'm totally kidding, but I'm not.
See, now Chris is gonna be pissed at you again, man. Here
See,
we
this
go,
is how I'm gonna get him on the show. He's gonna listen to this and be like, he's gonna text me and be like, Dick, what the fuck? I'll be like, that's why you gotta come on and do the Lanemeyer one when I do that with Sean.
That's awesome.
Are you tired of doing this stuff at all? Are you like ever just kind of like, I'm just don't want to do this shit anymore?
I mean, some days it becomes a job,
Yeah.
But honestly, no, man. I mean, I still love it. I still have the same, I still have the same fire for it that I did when I started it, and I love, I just love I love doing it, man, and it's kind of scary to me because sometimes when I think like, oh, what if I didn't do this?
What would you do?
What the hell else would I do right now?
Yeah. What would you do instead if you didn't do this?
I don't know, man. I think, well, I probably would teach, actually. I probably would try and, teach audio and stuff like that and everything on like a college level. That's something I actually always kind of did do. Like if I had time on the side, I would do like be like an adjunct, at a college and stuff. I taught classes at County College Morris for a while. I actually just taught a class at Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania, just one class because that's all I could really, really do, know. But I would love to. I guess if I wasn't doing it, I would love to do like, be a full-time professor with an audio program, build an audio program or something like that.
Why don't you make like a master class and put it online so you could just do it one time and then sell it?
Well, there's talks about that.
You can do
it's potentially in the works,
That's awesome, dude.
We're actually going to have one this summer, just a master like a master class, like a week camp kind of thing for students and stuff. I'm going to try and do. I've been talking about doing that for years, and I'm really, really trying to get it off the ground. This summer. The problem is things get busy, and try and do these extra things, and it's just hard. Especially with working with bands from all over. Because they're coming in, and we got 2 weeks booked or a month or whatever, and it's like trying to find the extra time is hard, but I'm really going to try and carve that out for the summer. I'm really trying to figure that out already. And
where they'd come to Portrait.
Stuff, so yeah, I would want to do like actually at Portrait, and kind of be like a week in the studio, seeing the craziness that that goes down.
That's awesome. That's so awesome, dude.
So
do you have any like crazy stories from recording?
Oh man. Of course.
Again,
I don't even know which one. I don't even know which one to tell.
Oh, tell the good one.
Man, oh gosh. Well, everybody saw Strippers in the studio from the drive-through DVD, so that was an interesting interesting story. You never saw that?
I never heard of this.
Well, it was actually pretty funny. I mean, drive-through, they would prank a lot of their bands by, when they were in the studio, they would hire like strippers to come and kind of surprise the band one day. And when the Early November was in the studio and we were doing The Room's Too Cold, they hired like two or three strippers, I can't remember, came to the studio. But it was so funny because like they show up and they're in the parking lot, and like, we're in like, yeah, you remember in Lincoln Park, there was other businesses there. It wasn't just this, it wasn't just the studio.
Right.
So like these strippers like get out of the car, like everybody like the other businesses are like, what the fuck is this, going on over here? And they show up at the studio, and the band was like so like awkward. It's like, oh my god, what the hell is this?
Oh
and so they videoed it, and it's on the drive-through DVD, so that's a good laugh if you want to ever go back and check that out.
Holy crap, that's amazing.
But that's a good story. And the funnier story that's part of that is that was the first day that my friend Michelle was going to start working for me, and I found out like the night before that strippers were coming to the studio. Richard and Stephanie called me like, yeah, strippers are coming tomorrow, just so you know. I was like, oh, good. So I called Michelle and was like, hey, you may not want to come in tomorrow. Maybe we'll just wait another day to start. So I'm like, oh, here she comes
like, I don't
in.
want a lawsuit on my hands right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, here she comes in, and it's like, oh, well, my first day on the job, and there's strippers in the studio. This is really fucking weird. And so just so you know, that's not on me. That's on them. So
good job, Director. Yeah,
But
drive
it
through.
was funny. It
Drive
was
through
funny.
loved the Jersey scene. They, I think they just saw a lot of potential back then in it.
Yeah, and they were from Jersey,
Oh,
you
that's
know.
right. I forgot about that.
So, I think that was, but also, they definitely had, they definitely had great ears for what was going on then. And in Jersey it was just, there was so much great stuff that was happening, hardworking bands and,
Oh yeah.
so.
I wonder if there's really any bands in Jersey that made any actual money. A buddy of mine, I was telling him today I was doing this podcast, and he's like, "Are you guys still like making money from your records?" I go, "Dude, we never made money from our records." I think even Matt Redleader probably hates Sean and I because we ended up. There's a whole thing that went on with the Redleader record and moving over to Two Hep that it was a bad thing where I still to this day I want to just like call Matt and be like, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry with what happened, But
Yeah. Yeah.
so a couple more questions and we'll bounce out. But yeah, actually I should ask this at the beginning, but where'd you get the name Portrait?
I got the name from, at the time, I was trying to think of, trying to think of names or whatever. I mean, basically, I always see a band's record, song as a portrait of the band, like forget about what they look like, forget about all that,
Yeah.
I mean, basically their music is the portrait of the band, and that's basically how I came up with it,
Oh, shit.
So yeah, pretty much. I mean, at the time I'm like, oh, this name is fucking awful, but but it made, I mean, that's how I felt, and obviously that's why I went with it, and it just, it makes sense, obviously, and but yeah, that's the story. So forget the image is everything, music is everything.
Yeah,
so
what reunion show would you want to see from the late 90s bands if they got back together and played? Who would you go see?
I mean, I would love to see LWL. I'd love to see Lane Meyer, Humble, and oh man, gosh, we got to throw some ska bands in too. I mean, One Cool Guy.
Yeah. Here's actually super funny. When we did the Humble reunion show with Lane Meyer in 2010, we played Maxwell's, and then we played what's that one in Rutgers? What the hell is the name of that bar?
Oh, like what, the bar at Rutgers?
Yeah,
the Court Tavern.
Court Tavern. So we had a show there. It was hilarious. We sell out Maxwell's, and the next day we show up to Court Tavern, and there's like 30 people. It was so reminiscent of back in the day where we were like, dude, seriously, still? Are you kidding me? But yeah, it was awesome. We were trying to get Gabe to play with Humble. There was a whole conversation going on in the back end where he's reaching out to him, and I don't know why we couldn't make it happen, but that would have been pretty epic. Because I mean, when we met Humble, we were still Congress of Cow, and we ended up befriending them. What it was, Josh, Gabe, and Delvecchio. And I mean, we would always just party together, and it was such a great time back in the day. So I mean, I
remember Josh and Gabe coming down to the studio a ton of times when you guys were in the studio and all different projects, and stuff. It's funny. I never did a track for Humble, from what I remember. I never did a track for Humble. It was always other projects, Midtown, obviously, and I forget, Josh did another project, I think.
Forever Endeavor? Did the Forever Endeavor
it was a Forever Endeavor stuff. I did something for them way back. But
oh my God.
But yeah, I always loved Humble,
Yeah, I think they always went to Nada. I think that's how we heard of Nada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was from them going there.
Probably.
We're like, that's so far. Why are you driving up there? Yeah, it's funny. Watch like following people on Facebook too now. Like the One Cool Guy guys are. It's funny to see them just in their daily life antics. And Monkey, man, he's always on Facebook posting about some political shit.
His new band's awesome though. I really like Red.
Oh really?
A lot. I mean, yeah.
Who's he playing
really
with?
Cool stuff. Oh geez, it's like totally like slipping my mind now. Who else is in that band with him?
Is that the one with Jeremy?
I'll think of it. I think it's Jeremy's the only one. Actually it is with Jeremy. I think he's the only other one that I know. At least it could be different now. I don't know, but yeah, stuff I've heard is cool.
That's
very
awesome.
Cool. Give me
Yeah.
a shout out, Monkey. See, look at that.
He's definitely
Your
gonna
drum
listen to
throne,
this.
his drum throne's still here at the studio from like 10 years ago too.
Monkey, go pick it up. And bring some strippers and beer.
There you go.
If you had a chance to record any of the bands, if they did a reunion album, which band would you want to record?
Oh man, for NJ bands.
Yeah.
Whew. Man, yeah, that's
But-
tough, man. That's a really tough question. I would say Humble because I never did a record for Humble.
Interesting.
And that would be cool. But I don't know, man. I mean, that's a really hard decision otherwise for me
Yeah.
to make, because I loved them all.
Yeah, there was definitely like a vibe. I remember just going there and we'd show up and it was just, you were always just happy. You were always like, hey man, like, yeah, whatever you guys want to do. Like, you never gave any problems. You just like went with the flow, but you had brought like you knew what your shit was. And I always loved that. I'm like, oh man, we're going to hang out with Badami. We're going to fucking record this whatever record. And me and Chris are going to yell at each other and someone's going to get into a fight at one point.
Yeah,
But
I'm going to have to tell everybody to calm down.
Yeah.
Well, that's my whole style though, man. Like, I always that's what I pride myself on too, is that I always want the bands, it's the band's record, and while, obviously I'm going to give my input and give my opinion of things, it really just, I want to capture the band, and that's what it wasn't, like you come in and it's like, all right, guys, this is what's happening right now, and getting everybody pissed off right out of the gate,
Yeah. I'm going to tell you how to record your songs that you're so egotistically holding on to right now.
I mean, it can happen, but yeah, that's not what I try. That's not how I roll, man. I want to capture, really capture what's happening with the band, and yeah, I think that makes for a great record, and obviously it's been working, so, but yeah, I'm glad you loved it, man. That means so hearing everybody, like, that's why I love going on the Facebook page too, and people are talking about, oh yeah, this and that, like, I love hearing, how everybody, loved coming in and stuff, and just the overall of everything that was happening at that time, just in New Jersey and in the scene. It was real special, man. It was very cool.
Are you in the North Jersey punk scene Facebook group?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that one's great because freaking Joe did that whole NJPP archive. It's so fun
when I look at that archive and I'm like, oh my god, like I did that record, like going through like all these, and like some of the bands who were like, they were like a band for like, a hot minute, and like are even on there, and I'm just like, wow,
yeah,
this is crazy. Like he's got everything up there, which is awesome.
Yeah, and the amount of time it must have taken him to put those goddamn videos up, to find the songs, make the videos, export them and upload them, and then make the page. I mean, that must have taken a freaking year. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's just like dedication right there. But
keeping it alive, man. Nice.
Keeping the scene alive, man.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you for giving me your time and just like reminiscing back then, because I think to this day, man, I think a lot of us, we all hold on to that so dearly, and you gave us the chance to hear these bands, and then like the sounds that you created became the things that we reminisce about. So when we hear it, like you made that. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you, man. This is awesome. Really, like I said, humbled to be part of that, and it was just equally as special for me, that whole time, and really laid the foundation, for me to still be doing this today. So I'm super thankful, man, and just thanks for letting me do this, man. I'm stoked.
Yeah, dude. Now, real quick, how can people find you now, since no one puts you on records anymore?
www.portraitrecordingstudios.com.
Awesome.
We're still online. ChrisBadami.com. I even have my own website today. So, but yeah, that's it, man. Internet.